Hi, folks, and welcome to the Salty Seaman. I lied. Was not quite done with boot camp yet. A couple things I missed. I realized a bunch of stuff, but four things I did want to get out before I moved on. So I'm gonna quickly go over those. So enjoy this little bit of Coda. First of all, back on Service Week is when I learned the wonderful Navy tradition of sending people off for stuff that does not exist. This is stuff like 50 feet of gig line, 20 feet of fallopian tubing, some military bearings. We actually had these little round wooden discs in the supply hold that somebody before us had written military bearings on. So we used to hand those out. One of my favorites from that era, never really saw again, was the overhead buffer. And at one point, somebody came in asking for the overhead buffer, and we gave him an old broken buffer. And before he left, we told him, hey, run it over the overhead a few times, see if it works. And he sat there trying to contemplate how to run it on the overhead, and he finally realized he'd been had and stormed off pissed. That was kind of funny. Now, we weren't starting the jokes; they were just everyone else was sending these people along, so we just played along, and I learned a lot of them early just from that. I was never gotten, even in the fleet, with the mail buoy or tightening the nuts on the MPA or any of those fun things. Another one I mentioned earlier and I never got into was a boot camp foot, which I had. Basically, just being on your feet a lot and as much marching as we did, and then just miles and miles a day in those steel-toed chukka boots. A few weeks in, I think it was the fourth week. Yeah, my toes just went numb. The tips of my toes, and I went to medical. And they didn't even look at him. They just said, yep, boot camp foot. We'll give you a sneaker chit, which means I got to wear sneakers instead of boots for a week. And it didn't help. But it went away 2 or 3 days into A school. Like, I just one day noticed, I don't have numbness in the bottom of my toes anymore. So that was good. But it's very common. Another bad comment of that era was stress fractures. People kept breaking their feet just constantly. You go to any A school and you just had a ton of dudes in casts because they were just getting diagnosed with these stress fractures and people were getting booted for it. So one of the better things that they, when they consolidated the Navy with. I also forgot to mention our first call home. I did not reach anybody and I knew I wouldn't. It was about, week 4, a little before we started service week. And it was 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And I knew, my dad worked half days on Saturdays usually, and my mom would be at the grocery store. So I called in vain in case someone was home by chance. And I didn't know what day. I didn't, maybe I could have sent a letter ahead of time. I'm not sure in that situation, but I didn't. So I ended up calling my neighbor or my friend's mom, my friend that joined the Air Force. And I talked to her and I told her to call my mom back in a couple hours and let her know I was okay and I couldn't get through. And then didn't call again. Didn't get a hold of my parents till week 7. A week before mom and pop night. Yeah. So that was interesting. And some people might be wondering about the about battle stations. I didn't mention them. That's simple. We didn't have them. That was 2 or 3 years after I came in. It was late 90s. I think a guy I used to work with, Gothier, was one of the first to go through it. And honestly, we're all old salts 2 or 3 years in, and we thought it sounded like a stupid idea. But it's been part of Navy boot camp forever. It's their version of the Marines Crucible. I don't know. I heard it's a pretty cool little thing. Some say it's corny. Others say it's pretty cool. I think Disney designed it. But didn't do it. We just did competition, and you just finish your time. You finish your time. There was no grand finale. And just make sure you passed all your final tests. Basic seamanship and DC and damage control, the last two tests I remember. And damage control is considered the Widowmaker. And your final inspections, your formation drill, the PT, all that good stuff. That was just kind of it. So anyway, I just thought I'd tack this on. One little coda for you. And next up will be Meridian, Mississippi, A school, Yeoman A school. So I'll catch you freaks around. Peace.